Hi, good people. Welcome to this new episode of the Macha Connect show. Of course, this is the biggest show in town where we bring you all the great information. Now, today we have woken up in a situation whereby information is flowing very fast. That is why anything happening throughout the world is usually in our small gadgets. Now, we have woken into a situation whereby Israel has been at war with other Islamic states. Now, today I want us to discuss more about Israel and the war and such. And because this information is so big, I can't do it in one episode. I will have to divide this information into 2 episodes. So now, we are going to look at how Israel became a state. Do you know that you can walk from one side of Israel to the other side? Actually, the narrowest point of Israel is 15 kilometers wide, which is from a town on the Mediterranean coast, which is called Netanya, and on the west bank town of Tulkan. So Israel is 950 miles, which is 470 kilometers north to south, and 85 miles, which is around 135 kilometers from east to the western. That is the biggest part of it. So Israel is located on the Middle East, the eastern side of the Mediterranean Sea, and it is bordered by Lebanon to the north, and to the northeast by Syria, and to the eastern to the southeast by Jordan, to the southwest by Egypt, and to the west the Mediterranean Sea. So if you look at this, is a country which is bordered by so many other states, of which they are Islamic states. So now let's look at the demography of Israel. Now, Israel is 20,770 kilometers squared, having a population of 10,094,000, which is per the 2025 estimates. They usually trade with the new shekel, and it has a religious population of 73%, which is Judaism, 18% Islam, 1.9% are the Christians, 1.6% Druze faith, and the others have an estimate of 4.5%. The capital city of Israel is Jerusalem, and the official language is Hebrew. There is one thing which is interesting about Israel, is that in terms of ethnicity, 73% are actually Jews, whereby 21% are Arabs, and the others take a portion of 5.3%. This is per 2023 estimates. Actually, Israel is the only nation which has a very lengthy and rich history, which is dating back on the pre-biblical times. This word Israel comes from Abraham's grandson, who was called Jacob. Remember that Abraham had 2 sons, Jacob and Esau. Now, Jacob turned out to be the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, in this, God gave Abraham a covenant that he will give the Israelites a land that they may dwell. Remember that Abraham was coming from a place which is called the Ur, which is normally in the southern part of Iraq, in a place which you call Tel El Magaya. It is usually the ancient Babylon, as per the Bible in Genesis chapter 12. Now, Abraham was given this covenant by God. If you look at Genesis chapter number 15, verse 18, the Bible says, "On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abraham and said, 'To your descendants, I give you this land.'" So, we understand that Israel originated from a promise that God gave to Abraham. We have known that Israel originated from Jacob. Now, after these 12 sons of Jacob moved to Egypt in the time of King Pharaoh, God had multiplied them until the Egyptians actually thought that they would be overruled by the population of the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, so through Moses, God's purpose was fulfilled, where the Israelites moved out of Egypt to the land which God promised Abraham, which is now what we call Canaan. Canaan is the land which God promised Abraham. Now, these tribes, after they moved from Egypt, they distributed themselves on the land of Canaan, which is what we are calling Israel, into different parts. If you look at this map, you'll find the tribe of Asher dwelled on the upper side, the Naphtali, Zebulun, going down to where the tribe of Simeon lived just next to the Dead Sea, and Reuben to the other side. Actually, Reuben and Gad lived in the place where we call in modern today the West Bank. But according to the Bible, the entire of this place was where God promised the Israelites that he will give them. After Israel occupied these places, you find that God gave them a king after they demanded for a king. That is where now Saul came in. Now from there we went to David, who ruled in 1000 BC. He was succeeded by his son, who was called Solomon, who is usually known for building the first Holy Temple in Jerusalem at about 931 BC. Now, after the King Solomon, this empire or the nation of Israel was divided into two kingdoms because Solomon had so many wives. So choosing one person to inherit the kingdom was difficult. So there was so many fracas during that time. That is why it ended up being divided into two kingdoms. That where there was Israel, and on the lower part there was what we call Judah. Now, the upper part, which was called Israel, had 10 tribes, and the lower kingdom was occupied by 2 tribes. Now, if you look now, after all that happenings, and after some years now, without a king, without a ruler, you find that now Israel was captured by the Assyrians in the year 722 BC. Now, if you look at this time, this upper part of Israel is what was captured. Now, later in 560 BC, the Babylonians conquered Jerusalem, and now the second part, all these 2 tribes of the Israel were captured again. So, they were taken by the Assyrians and the Babylons as per God's plan, that they will remain in captivity for 70 years. Now, that is why now, after these 70 years, they were returned to their kingdom. Now, fast forward, we find now the time of Jesus Christ, when he came to the world, lived for around 33 years, and later ascended to heaven. Now, after that, Israel was conquered by so many kingdoms, including what we call the Egyptians, there was the Arabs, there was the Romans, there is another group which was called Memuleks, and there is Islamists, which took over now that place which we are referring to as Israel. From the year 1517, the Middle East was ruled by the Ottoman Empire. From the year 1517 to around 1917, where they were defeated by the Great Britain, which now colonized Israel and those parts of the Middle East during the World War I. So this regime occupied Jordan, Palestine, and the today's Israel. If you look at that map, looks like this empire had a lot of power because it colonized the Europe, the Middle East, and parts of Africa on the northern part. Actually, this kingdom was so powerful. But in the early 20th century, there emerged a political movement which was called the Zionists. This political movement came amongst the Jewish, where they wanted to create a Jewish homeland in the Palestine. So, a lot of Jews migrated to this ancient homeland we are calling Israel or Holy Land, and they built a lot of settlements between 1882 and 1982. But during this time, the Arabs and the Palestinians resisted this Zionist movement. So there were Jews who were living in different parts of the world. These Jews who were coming back to the Holy Land to build settlements. Now, these Jews had moved to these other parts of the world after there emerged a movement which was called the Nazi movement. So the Nazi was a political movement under the leadership of a very popularly known politician who was called Adolf Hitler. So this guy had a fundamental ideology of this movement which was called Nazi, of hostility and discrimination against the Israelites. So this movement was very racist in their dimensions, which led to a lot of massacre of the Jewish people. After now the First World War ended, the members of the Zionist movement had one objective of creating an independent Jewish state. During this time, there was a British secretary guy who was called James Balfour. This guy submitted a letter with an intent to establish a Jewish state in Palestine. So a declaration was made and approved by the League of Nations. So the League of Nations was an organization which was made by countries who emerged victorious during the First World War. They included the likes of United States, France, Great Britain, and other neutral states. So in the year 1922, they signed a treaty with this League of Nations, which gave birth to the government controlling the Palestine. So this government controlling the Palestine was the British government. So they were given the power to control the Palestine. In the year 1947, the League of Nations approved a plan to divide the Arabs and the Jews. So eventually, in May 1948, Israel was officially declared an independent nation in Tel Aviv, where David Ben-Gurion became the first prime minister. That is how Israel became a nation.